She pulled away when you least expected it, not after a fight, not after a betrayal, but after what felt like your most honest connection. The nights you held her hand in silence, the way her voice softened when she said your name, the way her eyes once searched yours for answers like she was trying to memorize your soul. Then suddenly, cold, distant, unreachable, she started replying later, shorter. Her energy changed. And you noticed because men like you feel the shift long. Before it's spoken at first, you tried to stay steady. You gave her space, hoping she'd return on her own. You even questioned yourself, thinking maybe you were the problem. Maybe you were too available, too caring. It's transparent in a world where silence seems to win. But here's the truth. She wasn't looking for perfection. She was testing for presence. She needed to feel something real, without knowing what she was truly asking for. And when she didn't get that chaos she's used to, when you didn't collapse trying to keep her, she misread your stillness as disinterest. So she pulled away, thinking she could come back whenever she wanted. But by the time she realized your silence wasn't weakness, it was already too late. It didn't happen in a single moment. There was no explosion, no goodbye, no warning, just a soft unraveling. You felt it first in the way she stopped laughing at your jokes, the way her eyes didn't hold you as long, the little pauses between texts that started to stretch longer than they used to. At first, you tried not to overthink it. You told yourself, she's just busy, she'll come back. But deep down, your intuition was already screaming. It wasn't just time she was pulling back. It was presence. That glowing, curious energy she used to give you so freely, now filtered, controlled, distant. And you noticed, not because you're insecure, but because you're grounded, because you pay attention to the things that most men ignore. You saw how she changed the rhythm, how she no longer sent those goodnight texts, how she started taking hours to reply, even when you knew she was on her phone. You didn't get angry. You didn't accuse. You simply observed. Because real men don't panic in silence. They listened to it. But it hurt. Because something about the way she withdrew, it felt like being abandoned in a conversation you never got to finish. Still, you stayed composed. You let her take the space she clearly wanted, not to manipulate her, but to protect your own peace, because chasing her would have only cheapened the connection you once had. You knew that. You felt that. And so, you did the hardest thing a man can do when someone starts to fade. You stayed still. You didn't reach. You didn't beg. You didn't try to win back something that was already choosing distance. Because the truth was, if she really saw your value, she wouldn't need the distance to decide. And that was the moment, the exact moment you realized. Something real had quietly become something she no longer knew how to hold. It wasn't about you texting too much. It wasn't. That you said the wrong thing, or that you weren't enough. The truth was far more subtle, and far more personal to her. She pulled away because she didn't feel the uncertainty anymore. That addictive tension she was used to, the kind where she wonders, does he really want me? It was gone. You gave her security. You gave her presence, and without realizing it, it terrified her. See, many women confuse emotional safety with boredom, especially when they've lived their lives addicted to highs and lows. They crave affection, but they're conditioned to doubt it when it's calm. So when a man stands firm, grounded, clear in his intention, it triggers something unexpected. She starts questioning, why isn't he chasing? Why do I feel so seen, so steady, so exposed? Instead of leaning into that safety, she retreats, because part of her fears it won't last. Because if she accepts something real, she might finally have something to lose. You weren't the problem? Or just too real for someone still trying to feel worthy of love? 2. Stable for a heart addicted to chaos? To present for someone who never learned how to trust presence? So she pulled away not to punish you, but to protect herself from what she couldn't control. You became a mirror, and in your calm, she saw her unrest. She needed to reassert power, to feel the upper hand again. Not because she's cruel, but because that's what ego does when it feels small. And that's the part no one tells you. She didn't leave because you lacked value. She left because your value made her confront her own insecurities. You represented something deeper. A man who didn't play games. A man who didn't need to manipulate to be needed. And in a world where most women expect to be chased, your stillness felt like rejection. But it wasn't. It was strength. And that strength scared her more than any weakness ever could. This is the moment where most men fall apart. She pulls away, and panic takes over. They feel the silence and mistake it for failure. And so, they react. They start over-explaining, sending long emotional messages, trying to fix whatever went wrong, even when they don't know what it is. They chase, thinking closeness will bring her back. But what they don't realize is that energy confirms her doubt, because in her silence, she's watching how you respond. She's not just hearing your words, she's feeling your center. And when you break that center by trying to win her again, you lose her for real. You see, most men think being vulnerable means laying it all out, begging for clarity, asking for reassurance. But true vulnerability is strength, not surrender. What weakens a man is not his love, his need to be needed. It's when his identity wraps itself around her. Attention, so he starts proving, promising, overcompensating. He becomes soft in a way. It doesn't feel safe. It feels unanchored. And that makes her pull back even more. Because now, she doesn't see a man. She sees a boy trying to earn her love. She sees someone who gave up his frame the moment it got tested. And no woman stays attracted to that. They don't tell you this. But when you chase her validation, you teach her that your worth is negotiable, that love can be earned through panic, that silence is a weapon, and that she has the power to control you with it. But that's not love. That's insecurity dancing in a circle. I mean, if you step into it, you disappear. And the moment you break your stillness, the moment you react from fear, you become forgettable. Because masculine strength isn't proven in pursuit, it's revealed. In restraint, so, when she pulls away, don't follow, don't explain. Just stand still. And let your silence remind her of the man she almost had, and the one she'll never get back if she keeps running. She didn't pull away, hoping you'd chase her? Not truly. She wanted something deeper, something most men never give. She wanted you to notice, but not collapse. To feel her distance, but remain unmoved. Because deep inside her, beyond the ego and the games, she was waiting for a man. Strong enough to hold his ground, even when she became unpredictable. She was hoping you wouldn't do what every other man did. That you wouldn't flood her phone with messages. That you wouldn't ask what's wrong. 5 different ways. That you wouldn't become another emotional servant to her mood swings. What she truly wanted was to feel your center. 2. Test it and see if it would bend. Because if it bent, it meant you weren't who she thought you were. But if it held, it meant she had finally met a man who didn't need her to feel whole. In her silence, she wanted to hear your stillness. She wanted your absence to echo louder than any words. Not because she wanted to feel abandoned, but because she wanted to feel the weight of your value. She hoped you'd disappear, just long enough for her to question her own move. Long enough for her to remember how rare your energy was. When a man doesn't react, doesn't chase, doesn't beg, it becomes unforgettable. And the truth, she won't admit. She wanted to feel that weight. She wanted to wonder, did I just lose something real? Most women have never felt that kind of loss, because most men never make them feel it. But you. You didn't run after her. You didn't fight her pullback with panic. You let her go without punishment. And that shocked her more than anything you could have said. Because deep down, what she truly hoped for wasn't control. It was clarity. Clarity that you were different. That you were not the kind of man who breaks just because she pulled away. And when you gave her that clarity through your silence, you gave her something even more powerful than attention. You gave her the chance to miss you. And that's what she secretly wanted all along. At first, she thought you didn't care. She assumed your silence was indifference. You had quietly moved on without feeling a thing. But as the days passed, her confidence began to crack. Because you didn't reach out. You didn't check her stories. You didn't like that. Photos she posted, the ones she hoped you'd see. I didn't take the bait. In that silence, it started to scream, not in anger. not in revenge, but in pure masculine clarity. You weren't ignoring her. You were just done performing. Done dancing around her moods. Done auditioning for a role in her life you once filled effortlessly. At first, she convinced herself you'd come back. They always did. But this time felt different, because she wasn't being punished, she was being forgotten. Hate out of healing. And as your absence grew louder, the memories came back in waves. It's the way you looked at her with presence, the way you never competed, just existed fully, the way your calm made her feel safe, even when she didn't. Know why? Now, she was checking your profile in the middle of the night. Reading old messages just to feel something real again. Asking mutual friends about you carefully so it wouldn't seem obvious, because your silence had become a mirror. And in that mirror she saw the space you used to occupy. The one she left behind thinking it would always be open. But it wasn't. You weren't punishing her. You were protecting your peace. You weren't playing games. You were reclaiming your time, and the world noticed. She noticed people started seeing a different version of you, lighter, sharper, more alive. And she felt it too. Not in what you said, but in what you no longer needed to explain. Your silence wasn't emptiness. It was evolution. And in that quiet, she finally heard the loudest truth of all. You were never hers to keep, only to recognize. And now that she did, it was already too late. It didn't hit her all at once. Regret never does. It arrives slowly, like a shadow that follows her around, growing darker the longer you stay silent. At first she was sure you'd come back. She thought he just needs time. But as the days turned into weeks and your name faded from her notifications, a quiet panic settled in, so she reached out. A simple hey, something nostalgic, a picture from that night you both laughed until you couldn't breathe. She expected you to respond like before. Warm, available, open, but you didn't. Because you had changed. Not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. You had healed in the silence she left behind. And now you weren't waiting, you were living. That's when she knew. It's the very thing she once doubted, to become the thing she now longed for. She started noticing you in places she thought she'd forgotten. A laugh that reminded her of yours. A moment when she wished she could text you. A man who said all the right things, but never felt like you. Because the truth is, when a man holds his center, he becomes irreplaceable. Not for what he gives, but for what he doesn't need. You didn't chase. You didn't fold. You didn't try to convince her of your worth. You simply let her feel the loss. And that loss taught her more than any argument ever could. That not all men beg. That not all men break. That some men love deeply, but walk away with dignity when they're no longer met. She pulled away, thinking she had time, but she was wrong. Because while she was questioning your value, you were reclaiming it. And now, with everything clear, she stood there full of words, full of feelings, but none of them could reach you anymore. She realized it too late. The text you didn't send, the call you didn't return, the attention you no longer gave. That was your answer, and as the weight of that truth sank in, one final thought echoed in her heart. The same truth you already knew. You're not just attractive, you're unforgettable. There comes a moment in every man's life when he stops chasing closure and becomes it. You felt her silence. You respected it, but more importantly, you matched it. Not to play games, but to honor the man you've become. Because dignity isn't loud. It doesn't beg, doesn't explain itself over and over just. To be heard, it walks away quietly. And lets the silence speak louder than words ever could. You didn't lose her. She lost the version of you who was willing to wait. And in that space, you found something deeper than attraction. Found self-respect. So now don't look back. Don't reopen the door she closed with doubt. You're not here to prove. Your worth. You are your worth. And when a man stands in that truth, he doesn't need to be remembered. He becomes unforgettable. If this story echoed something inside you, hold on to it. Let it guide you. Because the next time someone pulls away, you won't chase. You'll pause. You'll breathe. Because you'll know. She didn't leave a broken man behind. She walked away from the one she'd never get back.